Do we actually know if the North Sentinelese have access to boats and have had access to boats? And the answer to that is yes. You can see right here in this photo that the North Sentinelese have their own canoes and they've had them for a while. And we actually know this because of Tian Pandit. He was one of the first anthropologists to enter the Andaman Islands and specifically North Sentinel Island back in 1967. So this article was posted right after the missionary John Chow from the US went missing on the island. Forbes magazine was lucky enough to actually get an interview with Tian Pandit because of the John Chow situation. So Pandit is the reason we know about this, and this is why. We know that they build small, narrow outrigger canoes, which they must maneuver with long poles in relatively shallow, calm waters inside the reef. From those canoes, the Sentinelese fish and harvest crabs, they're hunter-gatherers, and if their lifestyle is anything like that of the Andamanese people, they probably live on fruits and tubers that grow in the wild on the island. From those canoes, the Sentinelese fish and harvest crabs. So if you don't know what an outrigger canoe is, this is pretty much what it looks like. It's basically just a canoe with some sort of support beam on the left or right side. It'll obviously help them with fishing. And there's not only 1 or 2 photos on the internet of them with their canoes. There's at least 3 or 4 that I've found. And these are not small canoes either. They could easily fit up to 8 or 9 people in there, especially if they pack them in tight. It looks like they just get a log and cut it down the middle. You know, they carve it out so they're able to sit or stand on it. It also looks like they use some sort of pole to push them off the bottom. You can infer that they don't use these specific boats to go out into deeper waters, and it's possible that they don't go into deep waters in general. I'm sure they figured out how to use and build paddles, but it's possible that they just like to stay local to the island. And not only do we know that they use boats to hunt for their fish, but we also know that they have fire. Because in another interview with Tian Pandit, he said, "We spotted a footmark and followed it deep into the jungles. After walking in the forest for a kilometer or so, I saw an open area with 18 huts. Those were occupied, not abandoned ones. I noticed fire and cooked food items. We saw roasted fish, wild fruits, bows, arrows, and spears all around." So not only that, the salvage crew that would take apart the MV Primrose was also on there to testify that in the mid-90s, they described bonfires on the beach at night and the sounds of people singing. They don't know exactly what the Sentinelese were singing since the language isn't known to outsiders. They believe the language is pretty similar to the other tribes on the Andaman Islands, but we don't fully know. So my big question is, where would they actually fish on North Sentinel Island? Would it have been closer to the MV Primrose shipwreck, or do they like to go on the south side of the island? So one of the most interesting things for me is the fact that they use those poles to propel themselves instead of going into the deep waters. They don't have a large population, so I'm sure they're weary about going out into the deep ocean, because if one of them gets lost, then it's going to be like a quarter of their entire population already gone. Now they of course can drop these canoes off anywhere, but I was on this part of the island, the north part, and I found a little trail coming out, and it just makes me wonder. They're going to have at least 3 or 4 people dragging that canoe, and imagine having to drag that all the way from your camp somewhere, inland in the forest, all the way out to the beach. We also have to remember just how famous North Sentinel Island is and how many satellites are directed towards it, so they're getting recorded at all times. The satellite captured this image of a distinct smoke plume. It's kind of hard to tell in my opinion. I guess you could kind of say that it looks like smoke, but to me it also just looks like clouds that are passing by. But they also say the following day no smoke was visible and roughly a 40-acre burn scar was cut into the dense interior canopy of the island. These are the 2 photos that I'm talking about, and yeah, I guess you can see burn scars, at least according to them, because they're using a heat signature map. If you have infrared sensors over the island and it's detecting multiple burn signatures, then that pretty much clarifies that they do have access to, and they also know how to build fires. Because I've seen a narrative that they've kept a fire burning for the past 100 years because they don't know how to make fire. Like, come on, that's not realistic. So if you guys have any questions or comments, make sure to leave them down below, and I'm going to keep making these videos.